Okay, so today we're going to write an equation of a line given a point and a slope. So we're going to start with point slope formula. And this one is new. I haven't taught you this one yet. So it goes like this. It's y minus y sub 1, so it's sub 1, equals m, and then x minus x sub 1. So that's subscript notation. So this is called y sub 1 and x sub 1. So you want to make it low. So the first thing you want to do is recopy point slope formula. And the reason why this is called point slope formula, so they call it point because the x sub 1 and the y sub 1 is a point that is on the line. And then the slope is your m. So that's the reason why they call it point slope formula. So the next thing we're going to do is substitute. So this is your x sub 1 and your y sub 1. So in place of x sub 1, we're going to put the number 4, where the x sub 1 is. So we're just going to emphasize that we're putting a 4 where x sub 1 is. And in place of y sub 1, we're putting 3 in place of y sub 1. And we're putting negative 2 in place of the m. So the m is coming out of the game, and negative 2 is taking its place. So the second step is to substitute. So the first step is just to write the point slope formula down. And then the second step is to actually substitute the values. So remember what substitute means in soccer, football, all kinds of sports. Isn't it true that they substitute players, so volleyball, etc.? They take player 12 out of the game, maybe they're tired, maybe they hurt their ankle, and they put player 14 in their place. That is called substitution, right? So we're going to recopy the y, the minus, and in place of y sub 1, 3 is going to take the place, right? That's called substituting. M is walking off the field, and negative 2 is taking its place. And x sub 1 is walking off the field, and 4 is taking its place. So that is what we mean by substitute. Then the third step is we're going to use the distributive property. So I'm just going to say distribute for short. And remember, distribute is you're multiplying. So remember, doesn't this mean negative 2 is being multiplied to both of these terms? So we're going to recopy y minus 3 equals, and then we're going to do negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And then negative 2 times a negative 4 is a positive 8. So remember, we're multiplying. So you might want to take good notes. So are you writing down the steps? That first we just wrote out the formula, point slope form, and then we substituted the values, right? We took out and substituted those values. And after we substitute those values, then we distributed. And then the last step is to solve for y. Some people were solving first before they distributed, so make sure that you're following the steps. Don't do step 4 until after you did step 3. And then doesn't solve for y mean we need to get y by itself? So don't I have to add 3 because I'm subtracting 3 to both sides? And isn't a negative 3 and a positive 3 0? So that leaves me y equals negative 2x. And then 8 plus 3 is 11. And this is called slope-intercept form, which we are familiar with. And isn't the slope negative 2, and doesn't it cross the y-axis at positive 11, right? So the b is 11, which is where it crosses the y-axis. So remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And that's usually the form that we want. So if you're somebody who's not in my class, this is called point slope form. So sometimes some textbooks want you to stop right there because they just want you to practice getting that far in point slope form. But if you want it in slope-intercept form, then you got to continue if you want to get it into slope-intercept form. So you do the same steps, But here is point slope form, and then you can finish by distributing and solving for y to get it into slope intercept form. And I want you guys to get it into slope intercept form. So let's try another one. Okay, so here's example 2. So pause the tape, and why don't you try it on your own first, or see how far you can get, or maybe pause as we go through each of the steps. And so for an example, isn't the first step just to recopy point slope form? So practice copying that down. So maybe pause the tape and copy that down. So you should have copied y minus y sub 1 equals m parentheses x minus x sub 1. That is point slope formula. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to emphasize what are we subbing for y sub 1, for m, and x sub 1. So remember, this is your x sub 1 and your y sub 1. So we're going to put 8 in place of x sub 1. So 8 is going to go in place of x sub 1. Negative 6 is going to go in place of y sub 1. So I strongly suggest that you point, and then isn't 1/2 going in place of m. And so step 2 is to actually substitute those values. Now be careful. When you have y minus a negative, can't that be turned into plus 6? Right? So when you have subtract a negative, doesn't that turn into plus 6? And then 1/2, so the m comes out of the game and 1/2 takes its place. And then parentheses x minus, and x sub 1 comes out and 8 takes its place. So that's what you should have. And then after that, step 3 is to distribute. That means we're going to multiply 1/2 times x and 1/2 times negative 8. Remember, when you multiply 1/2 times a number, that's just dividing it by 2. So 1/2 times 20 is just take $20 and cut it down in 2, right? So 20 divided by 2, 1/2 times 16 is just 8. So everybody should be able to multiply by 1/2. So we've got y plus 6 equals 1/2 times x is just 1/2 x. And then a positive times a negative is a negative. So remember, it's a positive times a negative is a negative. And then what is 1/2 times 8? So that just means we're dividing 8 into 2. So that gives us 4. So after we distribute, then we solve. The last step is after you distribute, then we solve for y. So since we're adding 6, we're going to subtract 6 to both sides, because a positive 6 and a negative 6 is 0, and that leaves you just y. And a negative 4 and a negative 6 gives us a negative 10. And that's what you're doing on tonight's homework.